Good morning. For this private equity interview, we have with us Matt Kokar, who serves as an operating partner at the RMP Group, as well as managing and running a private investment office. Hermant, thanks for joining us here this morning.
Thank you, Tia, for having me.
Great. All right, so the first question, I spoke a little bit about your experience, but I was wondering if you could please briefly describe your position now. What do you do in private equity?
I am actually an operating partner at the RMP Group. In my current role, I am sourcing, structuring, and funding deals, different private equity deals in the mid-market private equity segment. I am also running the family office and its day-to-day operations, as well as managing a team of up to 15 professionals at various levels who are working on a bunch of other initiatives for our family office.
Great. All right, so you get a little bit of both sides. You get the private equity side and the family office side. That's interesting.
Absolutely.
Okay. What was your professional experience prior to entering the private equity industry? Did you work in investment banking or related field? I think I saw something about tech.
Yes. Actually, I have been an entrepreneur all my life. Started and sold a bunch of businesses, as well as I was a technology and a management consultant for about 15 years before I jumped into the private equity world. Things just materialized for me. I have no formal training in private equity or investment banking. My training is basically my experience as a consultant and running my own companies. I have the financial acumen, just running different enterprises and sourcing. I have been on the other side of the fence, so coming into the private equity world was relatively easy for me.
Oh, sure. Okay, well, that's a pretty interesting way for you to get into the industry, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Was there any particular education or training that you think best prepared you for private equity? It sounds like a lot of it's just being an entrepreneur and being able to prepare yourself for deals like that.
Yes, I think it is imperative that you do have a good financial background. After all, I mean, it is all about raising the money, raising the funds, and deploying those funds. So definitely having a good financial background is a must. Now, having said that, it is equally important for you to have a very good business acumen. What we have seen at the end of the day, I would give more experienced private equity individuals or people who've been running some sort of business or the other, and they know more about operating a business than just coming from a purely financial number crunching background, because as you can appreciate, at the end of the day, a projection is just a projection.
Absolutely.
It's all in the assumptions, and the best assumptions are made by people who have been in the business of doing or running a business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I know personally we get a lot of people interested in working in private equity that come straight out of business school or even straight out of undergraduate, and they don't really have any experience running a business, working in a business. And I think that's really crucial, like you said, to get that experience under your belt, and especially to be able to have experience operating a business is pretty important.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I was wondering, are there any trends that you see in private equity industry right now?
Certainly. There are a bunch of trends which we have observed for the last couple of months, almost a year. I think with the current economic and political uncertainty, most of the limited partners have become very, very concerned about risk management. Even the family offices are very concerned about how they deploy their capital, and everybody wants to de-risk their capital between 12 to 18 months on not just an early stage deal, but even companies which traditionally have been fitting very nicely into the LP model. That's one trend which we have observed. The other trend is there is really no holy grail of a sector. Case in point, there are some sectors where people want to rush into. Example, alternative energy. But what is a darling sector today might not be a darling sector within the next 3 months. I mean, look at what happened after the whole cylinder deal fell apart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It got very, very bad press, and really even anything else to do with alternative energy, people have just taken a step back.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other
it
trend,
sort of slowed the momentum. Sorry, you can go ahead.
absolutely. And certainly the other trend which we have seen, there is a lot more emphasis now on seasoned operators of businesses. Very strong management teams. A lot of partners and institutional investors are paying a lot more close attention to who the management teams are, and
Sure.
doing a lot of due diligence work in this particular area when we're closing on a deal.
Yeah. Do you think there's been an emphasis on due diligence in other ways? Like, how do you see that manifest really?
Due diligence obviously is very, very crucial. I think,
Sure.
and it's not just financial due diligence. Especially, I do a lot of work with the government sector, for example, and just to go through the trough of information on contracts, on set-asides, etc. That takes a lot of time. It takes a special skill to do some of that. And what we like to do is, depending on the sector, of course, hire not just a generic partner to do the due diligence, but somebody who is really more attuned to doing due diligence in that particular sector.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've heard actually family offices hiring private investigators and people to do background checks, criminal background checks, and everything just to prevent fraud. And even with private equity deals, you see some of that sometimes where the deal falls through because somebody on the other side is either inflated or flat out lied about their credentials, or the numbers just don't add up to what they've estimated and things like that. So I think due diligence is incredibly important.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the approach which we take here is what I call a phased due diligence. I mean, before you engage the legal help in drafting certain contracts, which is very, very quickly racking up the bills, I look at the numbers initially, the financial numbers, and the very first thing as a phased due diligence would be to do a quality of earnings report before you can even make a formal contract, or before you even write an asset purchase agreement or any kind of purchase agreement. It makes more sense to spend some money and do a quality of earnings report, go through the contracts before you start engaging the legal people and the legal department writing the contracts.
Absolutely. I think that's really smart advice. Can save you a lot of money, obviously. Yeah, I mean, that's the goal. What does a normal day for a private equity professional like yourself look like?
There is no normal day. It's very atypical. There are days where I spend most of my time looking at financial models, working with my team on the financial models, versus there are days where I'm just spending traveling, meeting the sellers, meeting their management teams, as well as developing my own management bench to run some of our portfolio companies, versus there are days where I just spend the whole day on the internet just researching on a particular sector or a particular company.
Yeah, 100%. Is that sort of refreshing to be able to have never a normal day, or is it sometimes a little bit hectic?
It gets hectic, but it certainly works for me. I seek a lot of change, and just having different stuff to do versus just sitting and doing the same thing over and over again.
Great. Well, what are some important characteristics of a talented private equity professional? Are there any unique skills or knowledge that you see as essential for succeeding in private equity? I know you mentioned business acumen and also having the financial knowledge, but is there anything else you could think of?
Certainly, I think to be successful, having a good financial background, having a good business acumen are two important skills. But also very important is the ability to network and really form a relationship. As a private equity investor, your job does not end the day you close the deal. In fact, it just starts the day you close on the deal. So you have to start planning post-acquisition what you want to do. And you don't want to be the proverbial puppy who runs after a car, and when the car stops, the puppy doesn't know what to do. So to develop that skill, you have to have a good 100-day plan. You have to have very good networking skills, and you need to know what you're doing post-close.
Sure, absolutely. Those are some great tips. What do you think a hiring firm is looking for in a private equity analyst or associate? Like, a lot of our listeners are transitioning in private equity or trying to accelerate their career, and just some tips for really growing their career in private equity and being a more attractive candidate to a hiring firm, whether it's, graduating from a top-tier business school or networking, as you said. If there's anything else you think of.
Absolutely. All of those are great skills to have. But what I also look for is somebody who has the entrepreneurial mindset. You don't have to be, a lot of people just coming out of school. I understand have not run or owned any business, but it is really important to have that entrepreneurial kind of mindset and think differently, think outside the box.
Great. Well, I think that's a really valuable tip that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think of, because they think that the same requirements that make you a good candidate for investment banking are the same qualities that a private equity firm will necessarily look for. But it sounds like there's a lot more of the entrepreneurial spirit, the ability to operate a business, that sort of thing. It's really important to you.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, is there anything unique to Florida that makes it particularly interesting from a private equity investing perspective? That's where you're located, correct?
Yes, that is. Obviously, like I said, good business development skills, the ability to just understand your customers' problems and deliver on your promises. That is what really drives those numbers which you had projected. So those are really key skills. Getting into an investment, thinking long-term, and really working your plan, executing your plan about the growth of a business. For example, typically when we work on a deal, I pick a sector where I have very, very good network, and I have a plan going into the acquisition. I have the management team lined up, people who have operated businesses or people who have delivered. So unlike an investment bank, our job, like I said earlier, does not finish the day we close on the deal. In fact, it just starts the day we close on the deal.
Yeah, I understand that. Well, operating in the southeastern region of the United States, do you try to invest locally, or do you guys look for deals all around the world?
Yeah, we are globally opportunistic, so we do not restrict ourselves to a particular geographic location. In fact, we are looking at some international deals. We have invested in the Caribbean. We are looking to invest in India and in Latin America.
Okay,
not to mention all of North America.
Yeah, I have some interviews lined up actually as part of this series with private equity firms in India and Indonesia and Vietnam and all around the world. It just seems like private equity is ever expanding. So there is no real local firms. It's more of almost every firm I meet with has a global reach in some way.
Absolutely. I
was wondering if you had one mistake or particular technique that could save someone $10,000, for example, like something that you really want to avoid working in private equity.
Well, I just gave you a $400,000 tip earlier when we were talking about the phase due diligence.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that is something which we've learned from our mistake in the past, is really to one of the most important things is never to rush into a deal. If it almost all the deals which you look at, if you're rushing into it, you're going to make bad decisions. And my advice is just to take your time, take this whole phase due diligence report. In the meantime, just keep your communication channels open with the management team and with the seller, and develop a rapport, and really meet and greet with these people, so you can really pick up on the vibe and try and understand what is the real reason for the deal being put on the table.
Great. That is some great advice. Well, thank you. I was just wondering if there was anything else you'd like to add. I don't really have any more questions that I was trying to get through, but if there's anything else you'd like to add or something you want to cover, I'd be more than happy to go through it.
I think we covered quite a bit. I think your program really gives some kind of stamp of approval, and it is a really a good certificate to have.
I appreciate that. Okay, well, that will conclude our interview, and I just want to thank you again. This is Hermant Kokar, serves as operating partner at the RMP Group, and I want to thank you very much for joining us here today.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, I'll be in touch.